Good afternoon. Let's talk about what people consider one of the best films ever made in the movie industry. And quite frankly, at first I didn't really understand the video or the film itself. Um, you know, Technically, the way it was created, it's not outdated. That's not the correct word because the film has a lot of visual effects for its time period. The film was created in 1941 and it was made by Orson Welles, which I've done a little bit of research about him, and this individual was a very experienced theater major. And that's one of the reasons why I think this film did a great job because um, one of his quotes is he was very ignorant whenever he created this film. And I don't want to say it shows, but he went into this film hoping to just write a film or create a film. He wasn't expecting feedback or the audience opinion. And I found this very beautiful because it shows us that he went into this film with an open mind and just happened to stumble upon one of the greatest films ever made. Now, the film itself is very long. It has no cinematic effect as far as CGI, well, for example, like what we saw in the Avengers Endgame, but it had very technical, unique shots, right? And one of the shots that we can see, for example, is the deep focus. One of the examples is whenever Mr. Kane was talking to Thatcher, and we see that Kane happens to walk towards the window and the camera happens to pan backwards. We see that Kane here is, in my opinion, I guess, getting small. And, you can take this metaphorically, or you could just enjoy the film based on what you see. But I feel like this shot was very significant for its time. Another one would be a close up. And not only just a close up, but we actually had a very extreme close up, right? And what people would consider the milestone of the film, which is when Mr. Kane whispers Rosebud before he passes away. And in this extreme close up, all you see is the lips, and Mr. Kane expresses the words Rosebud. It kind of baffles the audience because we don't know what Rosebud is. It can be a person, a nickname, a location. We really don't know. Speaking of locations, one of the very famous, unique locations is actually when the film itself opens up, and it's what shows Mr. Kane's mansion. I believe it's pronounced Xanadu. And at this time, whenever the scene opens up, all you see is the lighting. And it's actually quite glamorous. It's very beautiful, because all you see is just a state. And to me, it's supposed to signify how big Mr. Kane was, but yet there's just a little bit of lighting, which indicates the light he had inside of him. Again, I can be looking too metaphorically into the film, but that's just my perspective. There was a lot of camera shots that at the time were very, very dramatic. One being whenever his, I guess, future ex-wife was trying to be an opera singer, and the camera kind of pans upward, and we see the two individuals standing on top of what seems to be a platform. And of course, one closes his nose, and that indicates that the individual, the person singing, was not doing a great job. Another famous shot would have to be whenever Mr. Kane himself was running for governor, and how he had his abundant crowd just standing there or sitting there listening to him talk, right? The film itself, I feel like it's very advanced. There's a lot to be said about it. If I saw this film when I was younger, I probably wouldn't understand why people say it's the greatest film ever, But now, as now that I'm a little bit older and I can actually appreciate the film, I can see why people say that. The film is very diverse in the sense that Mr. Orson did not hold back on the different camera techniques that he can use, right? I feel like the reason why people really, really appreciated the film is because it covers a very sensitive topic to many, right? Childhood. And what better way to grasp someone's attention than to talk about the individual's childhood? Now, Mr. Kane is rich throughout the film. We see that he built his empire. We see that he had a numerous amount of wealth. We see that he grew his business through newspapers and radios. But past all that, at the moment of Mr. Kane's death, what did he bring up? Well, he brought up his childhood, right? And this is where Rosebud comes. At the end of the film, we see that Rosebud was actually one of the sleds that Mr. Kane used that was actually earlier brought up in the film whenever his parents were talking about sending him off with a distant family member. He was outside doing what? Playing with the snow, right? Throwing or making snowmen, throwing snowballs. And we actually see the camera reverse backwards, and I guess Mrs. Kane is talking to her husband about letting go or letting Mr. Young Kane live off with this family member. And here we see that obviously Kane wasn't ready for this big jump, right? So at the moment of his death, he saw that, he was reliving his childhood. It doesn't, the man could have owned the whole world, but all he could think about in the moment of his death was his sled, right? And to me, that's kind of big, man, because, I don't want to bring my service in here or anything, but as a veteran, if I was when I was in combat, I held very dearly a rosary that my mother gave me. And I always told myself that if I ever happened to pass out or pass away in combat, that I would hold this, close to me and hope for the best. And I feel like that's a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. And not only did the film just break all kinds of boundaries, but it was a very, very well played film. The film doesn't necessarily just talk about Mr. Kane. It was through the eyes, well, not through the eyes, but I guess a reporter that was trying to uncover the reality of Mr. Kane stumbles upon different people that Mr. Kane met throughout the years. And this is how he was able to build his story, right? And the film shows memories, right? And what better way to grasp your audience than by virtually taking you throughout different memories of the film, right? Look, the film was made in the 1940s. So some of the sounds are kind of eerie. Some of the visual effects are kind of outdated. But as far as the film itself, it's very unique. It may not be for everyone. Not everyone might jump on the Citizen Kane as the best film train. And everyone has the right to their opinion, right? But it's safe to say that because of this film, many other directors and artists were able to truly express who they were. And I feel that this is why, well, not the only reason, but you grab the unique film shots, the way the film was actually portrayed, the feel of the movie, and this is why it holds up still to this day. Because all that encompassed, you can see that this film is actually a pretty great film. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit long, but I had a lot to say about this film, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.